Welcome everyone to Really with Tom and Dave. I'm Dave Foley, and sitting next to me is Tom Wheeler.
I never get to sit next to you.
Yeah, there we go. And as usually the way we do this, Tom usually does the intro, so I'll defer again because as you can see, if you're sitting in the room with us, which a tremendous, great group of people. So many familiar faces and friends in the room today. It's wonderful. So, but we have two of the greatest figures in the UFO world right now sitting with us. Tom.
Oh yeah, don't take all my fun. I get to introduce. First of all, yes, our live recording here at Contact in the Desert, the beautiful Renaissance Hotel, and this great room, this facility. Lovely Indian Wells, and remember, just because you have the headphones on, you can laugh, you can engage, and that's great, and thank you for that. Also, we'll try to get some questions in at the end, and may have a special guest or two, even though we have two incredibly special guests already.
Yeah.
They need no introduction, but damn it, they've earned it. So I'm gonna give it to them. Jeremy Corbell is an American contemporary artist, investigative filmmaker, and journalist. His movies available widely include Bob Lazar, Area 51, and Flying Saucers, Patient 17, and Hunt for the Skinwalkers. He is known for his documentary work exploring real-world mysteries in the field of UFOs, advanced technology, and the dark space, where science confronts the abnormal. His new series, UFO Revolution, which is awesome, a 3-part event series streaming on Tubi, has definitely created buzz. We had the chandelier, lots of stuff was released there. Military footage, never before seen, UAPs. He's an incredible friend of this podcast. We're really happy to have him. And next to him is George Knapp. Mm-hmm. Both of them, yes, Jeremy and This guy is Nevada's best-known journalist. Since 1995, George has been the chief reporter on Channel 8's I-Team Investigative Unit. In that capacity, he's earned 5 regional Edward R. Murrow Awards, 2 national Edward R. Murrow Awards for his investigative stories. He's a 9-time winner of the Associated Press Mark Twain Award for Best News Writing. His reports have been awarded the highest honors in broadcast journalism, including the DuPont Award from Columbia University, the Peabody Award twice, 28 regional Emmys. His 1990 series about UFOs was selected by the United Press International as best in the nation for individual achievement by a journalist, co-authored several books on the UAP topic, including Dreamland, an autobiography with Bob Lazar, Hunt for the Skinwalker with Colm Kelleher, and Skinwalkers at the Pentagon, an insider's account of the secret government program with James Lakatsky and Colm Kelleher. That will keep you up nights. And a brand new, just-released follow-up called Inside the Government Covert UFO Program, Initial Revelations, also co-authored with James Lakatsky and Colm Kelleher. Together, they are the dynamic duo of the podcast Weaponize, regularly breaking news and punching holes in the firewall toward transparency.
There you go. Yes. And George doesn't like to bring this up, but he is a 3-time Mr. Universe.
Yeah.
But he retired his Speedo quite some time ago, but yeah.
Welcome, everyone. This is exciting.
Yeah, welcome, guys. Can you see? It's a
I'm
weird
staring at your
configuration.
head.
All right, there we go.
But you when I need something.
Near your microphone too. So there we go. Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do that.
Oh,
I'm gonna do that.
Around, man.
It's your show.
I'm in show business. I know how to use. I have some mic technique.
Was smooth.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Oh, okay.
After all that talk,
You start. Don't forget to stay on your mic.
I have a question.
See. Mm-hmm.
So, zero doubt. We just heard this term.
Carl Nell.
Zero doubt. Them's fighting words. You
Yes.
know, at a moment where it seemed like the empire was striking back, someone comes out and says there is zero doubt that we're dealing with NHI interacting with our planet. So, Georgia, is Carl Nell in a position to have zero doubt in your mind? Like, what did you think of that statement?
Yeah, I think he's in a position to know. He interacts with a lot of people who presumably should know. He's been behind the scenes and had access to a lot of information that the public doesn't get to see. I wish I were in the position of saying I have zero doubt. I have zero doubt there's something to it, but I don't know what it is. So I have a lot of doubts about the nature of the non-human intelligence, whether it's just one or many, where it's from, why it's here, what its interest is in us. We know so much more than we did before, but we still don't have any concrete answers to the big stuff. I'd like to believe that there's some controlling interest inside the government, maybe inside industry, that's working on this. I know they are. but whether they know the answers to any of these questions or not. Jeremy and I have been pretty far up the food chain. I've been at this a long time and have developed sources and friendships and bits and pieces of information and a lot of stuff that I still can't release to this day, but which paints a pretty clear picture that something really strange has been going on for a very long time, maybe as long as humans have been here. The nature of it, though, the big questions, we don't have an answer to any of them, and I don't know anyone who does. Where are they from? Why are they here? What's their interest in us? What's the long-term plan? Where does this lead? Is there a happy ending or something pretty sinister? And we don't really know. And I don't know anyone who does. And I don't know if Jeremy does or not. But, doubts? Yeah, I have some doubts about
the nature,
the parameters of it and the nature of it. But I have no doubt that it is real, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm. And I was going to say, what was Carl Nell? What was his relationship within the UAP task force with David Grusch? Do you know?
I don't know exactly what his job was. I've never interacted with him. I mean, I know about him the same way you know about him from reading about it. But we've seen these recent statements. But he directly interacted with Dave Grusch.
Yeah,
I know. I have a better familiarity with the two guys who gave Dave Grusch his marching orders. One is Jay Stratton, who created the UAP task force, who coined the term UAP for our government. He's the guy that changed it within government. I mean, he was working on the UAP task force before it existed, before it formally existed. There was a structure, an organization, and Mr. Stratton, who had worked with the OSAP program prior, he had been at DIA. He had read Hunt for the Skinwalker around the same time that Dr. James Lukatsky read it. He was instrumental in the creation of OSAP and guiding OSAP. And then he was, after OSAP, the plug was pulled, he became involved in what came to be known as ATIP, a working group. I don't know if you can really call it a program, but a working group within the Pentagon that had fingers in other agencies. Jay was instrumental in putting that together. And then after the New York Times story happened, he was called back into that arena and given the job of, hey, we need somebody who's had some experience in this to help put something else together so we can get our arms around it. Because a lot of people in Pentagon and government intelligence circles had no idea these studies had gone on. I mean, it was that compartmentalized. They had no idea the nature and volume of evidence that had been collected already, the solid proof that existed, the indications that we have recovered technology that we've been reverse engineering for a long time. They had no idea. So they put Jay in charge of that. He created this organization. It was later formalized at the UAP task force. And for a brief period of time, they were actually honest. Mm-hmm. They were honest with it. I mean, he led the charge to get the U.S. Navy. He had spent a lot of time in naval intelligence. He was a civilian with a ranking of a 2-star admiral, the equivalent of. Mm. And when he walked into a room, people paid attention to him. And he made so much progress. And unfortunately, the plug was pulled on that too. The Pentagon
too much progress there.
Yeah, too much progress.
They decided to set up their own UAP investigation.
I mean the work that Jay and others had done. Some of the people that we'll probably talk about today, that Jeremy and I know and have interacted with a lot, really did the heavy lifting to move the ball down the field. And when the Schumer amendment and that legislation was proposed, and they're suggesting everybody has to tell everything they know, and we've got eminent domain, and we're coming after your UFO bits and pieces and metamaterials and crashed saucers. After that legislation was killed, that's when the Pentagon really flexed its muscles. The Pentagon itself, which wields tremendous influence in Congress, aerospace companies that give all this money to particular Congress members who are in key positions, killed it. And they created this sham of a program called Arrow that has now shown its true cards to the world.
Yeah, and it does seem like, I mean, a lot of people are comparing Arrow to, I guess, to Blue Book, and also comparing its report to the Condon report as being a report that, like the Condon report not only didn't stick to the fact, it didn't even stick to the facts within its own report, as I understand it.
That's exactly correct. Condon report, so the U.S. Air Force wanted UFOs off its plate, and they said, well, we need to we get a study that justifies what we want to do anyway. And they went to, I think, Condon, the University of Colorado is the third or fourth or fifth university that was offered this contract, and everybody else said no. They could see what it was, which was going to be a sham of a study. Condon gets the contract, and there are some now infamous memos that were circulated between he and staff members that openly boasted before the study began that it was going to be, the trick was to make it look like it's objective and fair, when it wasn't.
Yeah.
I mean, the conclusions of that study that say there's nothing to it, it's not a threat, it's nothing to worry about, move along, folks, nothing to see here, do not match the data that's in the actual report.
Yeah. Yeah, and he actually said that I think UFOs are all nonsense, but I'm not supposed to come to that conclusion for a year.
Yeah, and he also he wrote that UFO authors and researchers and investigators should be horsewhipped.
Yeah.
This is the head of the study, this impartial study.
Well, he had a lot of investments in horsewhips. Yeah. So
There's Dave Foley.
But because the Condon report was, and again, now we have the Arrow report, which seems to be like it's long, but it seems to be remarkably devoid of any facts, any supporting material for any of the things they claim. And it seemed like it was like just a cut and paste job that would get you kicked out of university.
I compare it to Bart Simpson had to prepare a report for Mrs. Krabappel's class, and he wrote it the night before because this thing was preposterous. Typos and just factual errors, getting the dates of key UFO events that everybody in this room knows when they happen, getting those things wrong. It's just sloppy and forced, and it seems like it was put together and put out 2 months ahead of schedule. When does that happen in government?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Just so they could have Sean Kirkpatrick still on the payroll to go and spread the gospel.
Well, you both did a really effective takedown of this of the
on the
Kirkpatrick
weaponized,
thing on weaponized, and it was pretty eye-opening.
Jeremy did that.
It was.
I don't remember what happened.
What you were laying out, and George, you were talking about how it really it accomplished a number of things in terms of just punching the hell out of the kind of UFO community, the whole issue. Like, can you describe, because it was kind of amateurish, but it was pretty professional in how it was doing its takedown. I mean, it seemed to have some real thought behind it.
Well, my impression was that it was designed for two primary audiences. One is members of Congress. Members of Congress have power. They've been forcing the issue. Some of them more outspoken, some friends of Jeremy and mine who have been more outspoken than others, but there are a lot of people behind the scenes who haven't been outspoken who also are supportive of this, who'd like to know. Just basic human curiosity, what's going on, have we been lied to? This report effectively gives them cover to walk away from it. Look, members of Congress, every day they got some crisis on their plate. You know, there's Gaza, there's Ukraine, there's inflation, there's all kinds of things that are higher priorities than UFOs and UFO transparency. Those who are interested in it, even them would be pulled away by some of these other competing priorities. This gives all of them a reason to walk on and say, there's nothing to it, Arrow looked into it, we can do something else. And secondly, it was aimed at mainstream media. You know, after the New York Times story comes out, suddenly it becomes, if the New York Times can do it, it's acceptable for us to do it. Washington Post and New York and other newspapers, 60 Minutes gets involved. There was a lot of coverage that happened. Since that has happened, though, a lot of those folks have backtracked. You see the New York Times, they're not publishing UFO stories. They're publishing UFO diatribes and editorials that might as well, they're posing as UFO stories, but that are slapping this down. They're right back where they were for 50 years. And I think that report buttresses the position. It gives mainstream media who didn't want to cover it in the first place a reason to move on down the road and do something else.
Yeah, it seems like, especially like Julian Barnes over at the Times, the New York Times, just seems to be doing slight rewrites of press releases from DOD.
Yeah, I mean it's shameful. They all, you know, they get a hand-picked group of people who get the Arrow report the day before. how much time did they spend writing that story? It looks like Sean Kirkpatrick could have written it for them, or Susan Go, and they just regurgitated what the Pentagon put out. It's shameful.
And any other subject, they would get others. They would get other sources. They would question the content of what they're told by DoD. But in this case, that never happens.
And they brought people in. They got their stories. They got their information. They kind of bled them for the people that went in, and then basically said, there's nothing to see here, so completely blew them out of the water. What's been the fallout, or what have you observed in sort of within? I mean, are people afraid to come forward, or do they feel demoralized?
Well, a lot of the people, the whistleblowers that we've talked to, and people who've worked in those programs, are still devoted to it, but they feel a little less certain about the future. Arrow was openly inviting whistleblowers to come forward. You got UFO information or evidence? Come and see us. Let us see it. And they just took a dump all over them. Yeah. All those guys. We don't believe any of them, basically. All those people came forward, like Bob Jacobs, his case of Vandenberg Air Force Base and a UFO intercepting a missile. That's a pretty well-documented case. They just wiped it out like as if with a Harry Potter's magic wand or something. None of it's true. What does that tell you to people who are coming forward, risking their careers and reputations? They don't know what the total risk might be, to tell their story and get it on the record in good faith, and then they just kicked them right in the gonads. It's I think it sends a message to other whistleblowers to watch your step, which might also have been an intentional message from Arrow.
Yeah. Well, and also Kirkpatrick has been both in the report and in his public appearances lately has been trying to do some character assassination of all of the Congress and all the Senate and House representatives that are taking the subject seriously, and basically putting forward the argument that they've all been duped or brainwashed or hypnotized, by Svengalis like you two, basically.
Yeah, it's like accusing them of being religious zealots. They're religious zealots in Congress because they're interested in UFOs. Well, those aren't religious objects that are flying over our air bases, that are buzzing the ships, like in 2019 off the West Coast. Are those angels? I don't think so.
Yeah, no.
Those are mechanical devices of some kind demonstrating a technology that our military does not have. And, it's one reason why it's useful to look at some of the older UFO cases, like Makatsky and Collum did in that other book, is because we know for sure there were no Chinese drones buzzing Kansas wheat fields back in 1940, 48, and 49.
Yeah.
We don't have that ability to do today, let alone back then. So, don't get me started on this.
No, we have to get you started because we have to fill an hour.
Jeremy,
hour and a half.
Yeah.
Jeremy's a good ranter. He can rant.
Yeah, but Bart, do some ranting. What about because it still seems like there's that notion that people say, UFO just means unidentified, and the people that cling to the idea that this is some dark money project within the U.S. military, even though that seems like even the Pentagon has pretty much debunked that idea, but that idea still persists, and people cling to that as a way to not have to think about a non-human intelligence.
Well, we know from the Pentagon's own documents, I spoke about it in there with George Norrie in the big hallway an hour ago about FOIA becomes the law of the land in the mid-'70s. And, prior to FOIA existing, the Pentagon, intelligence agencies would share information about UFOs, memos, reports, statements that are absolutely astonishing, where they said, all right, these things are real, they're metallic, they're mechanical, they're not ours, we don't think they're Russians, they're from somewhere else. And they did a lot of reports just like that. And they didn't know that eventually they might have to release them. Now, of course, they're much more careful about what they put into a piece of paper that might someday see the light of day. I think they've got all kinds of ways to get around FOIA. But when those papers came out, that paper trail, oh my gosh, it lays it on out. The things that we're seeing flying now are virtually identical to the things that were flying around over our military facilities, over nuclear labs and nuclear missile bases back then in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. We don't have them now. We didn't have them then. They're from somewhere else, and although we don't get a good paper trail now admitting that it's somewhere else, there are some documents that can come forward, and more importantly, these witnesses who worked on the inside who've said, it's not ours. It's flat out not ours. Members of Congress who've said, we better hope it's aliens and not Chinese or Russians, because this technology would kick our asses.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, what do you think would happen? Like, if somebody does have this technology, I mean, don't you think whoever had it would use it at some point?
Yeah, like us. We'd use it.
Yeah.
If it's ours, we'd use it.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, like, the U.S. is the only nation on Earth that has never produced a weapon without using it. So I'm always skeptical about the idea that they just have all this great stuff that they're keeping secret for some reason.
I guess the only scenario that makes sense is that, we have that technology and haven't used it because we still want to generate billions and billions of dollars for aerospace technology for companies, and even though it's wasted, that would make sense.
Yeah, but if they could go to Mars and get resources, in a couple of hours, it seems like we'd do it. Yeah.
There's a really interesting moment, it feels like, that you've talked about in your books, and you talked, both of you, with James Lukatsky, where it seemed like for a minute Bigelow Aerospace was there was some conversation about an aerospace company wanting to divest themselves of this troublesome material or whatever. Can you talk about
Lockheed?
Yeah. Can you talk about that? That's it seems like we were almost there, something.
Well, there are some pretty big hints out there in the public arena already. The first story I did about OSAP in 2018, Jeremy and I made a presentation together, and I had gone to D.C. and to meet with Reid and the guy that I had heard about but never met. It turned out to be James Lukatsky, who gave me the rundown on OSAP. And I knew there was a program like it. I knew who was involved because I was friends with Bigelow, who got the contract. He came on Coast to Coast with me in September of 2008, a week after they signed the contract with DIA, and told me about it, and told the world about it. No one paid much attention to it. He couldn't say it was DIA. He just said,
hold on, that was
partner.
Coast to Coast. So I'm a fan of Coast to Coast. And I'm listening to this, and you're interviewing Bigelow, and he straight tells the audience that they have, a partner, and it was the DIA. This was before the world ever even got a hint about it. Yeah. It's a historic Coast to Coast show if you ever go back and listen to it.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, boy, we're going to make some news here. Not a ripple, nothing. Nobody picked up on it, and I said, okay, all right. I'm going to keep working on it. You guys, you can ignore it if you want to. And so I learned a great deal about the program and everything that was going on. But in the contract that I was able to make public years later, it's required Bigelow Aerospace to make special modifications to its facility in Las Vegas to accommodate certain materials. It doesn't spell out what the materials are, but we can all imagine what those materials are. They fully expected to get it. They never did get it.
Like a hangar?
They have a hangar that was modified, and they did some other modifications. They built a skiff at the facility too. And Bigelow, in fact, spent more than $1 million of his own money just to get ready for the possibility of it. And so that's that's clue number one. Clue number two is, in Skinwalkers at the Pentagon, we revealed the existence of what the world now knows as Kona Blue. It was after the plug was pulled on OSAP. One of the things that had happened is Bigelow's people associated with the DIA program went knocking on the doors of certain aerospace companies and other agencies and saying, hey, where's this stuff? We were going to get it. Where is it? And the negative reaction was so strong that it caused the demise of the program. It contributed to it. Suddenly, people who didn't know what these guys in Las Vegas were up to started asking questions. The stovepipe was breached, and the program was imperiled because they didn't want it to happen. After the plug is pulled on OSAP, they tried to find a new home for that program, a more expanded program that's been described in these documents, Kona Blue, that have been released. And they went to DHS, and they said, we think this is a good place for it. They had several meetings, and they told them, basically, we've got craft. We've got an intact craft. We didn't build it. It's from somewhere else. In fact, there are other pieces here and there. And there was a company that somebody just mentioned that was willing to give it up. This company has had this stuff for a long time. They've been trying to figure it out. They haven't made much progress. They wanted somebody else to get it, take it off their plate. Good luck, guys. And
who's in that meeting? That's Lockheed people and...
I think there were multiple meetings.
Right.
So the one that we're talking about, and that we talk about in the book, was at the Department of Homeland Security. Lockheed had been part of conversations previously, and they were willing to give it up. There was another agency that was involved with them that said no way and slammed the door. DHS, our Homeland Security people, are impressed by the information that was shared with them. There were multiple very detailed briefings. Their chief science and technology advisor said, yes, let's go. And then she dispatched some DHS personnel to go to these other enclaves of information and knock on the door and ask, hey, if we do this, can we get the goods? And the reaction was visceral. I mean, they slammed the door, get the hell out kind of stuff. They came away convinced this is real. It really does exist. So, if you thread together all these different little pieces into a tapestry, you can see that technology is real. There was an aerospace company that's had it that was willing to give it up. Bigelow was ready to take it. OSAP and DHS were both willing to analyze it. But there are powerful forces there that didn't want that to happen and shut it down.
Mm-hmm. You had a really kind of fascinating friendship with Harry Reid for years. In terms of, what do you think, was he all the way there? Was he all the way in believing that there was something recovered?
Yeah, he was all the way there.
All the way there.
Let me jump in. So why Harry Reid was interested in UFOs is because when Bob Lazar came forward in silhouette to George Knapp, George started hearing the story. If I tell this story wrong, you should tell it. But he rolls up on Harry Reid. He's in a limo going to the airport, which is now the Harry Reid Airport.
Yeah.
And George is like, he's like a young reporter. He's like, so listen, there's something about Area 51, UFOs, flying saucers. He's like, let me tell you about it. Harry Reid, George says, didn't kick him out of his limo. So they're going to the airport, and like he basically tells Harry, there's something going on here that's pretty big. And Harry listened to him. So for 30 years, George and Harry had this private conversation going, and I'm sure like all the staffers and people handling Harry Reid were like, what the fuck are they talking about, right? But they would talk over these years. There's footage of Harry Reid, young Harry Reid, right after, the night after you had Lazar on.
The night of Lazar.
The night of Lazar. Yeah. And you should find this footage. It's amazing. Harry's like, I've heard about it. It's really interesting, George. I'm going to stay on this. That was kind of Harry Reid's gateway drug into UFOs was George Knapp, right? Which we can all kind of relate to.
Yeah.
You messed this all up.
I was going to say,
my work here is done.
Yeah. Show of hands. How many people's gateway was George Knapp?
Come on. It's like,
yeah.
It's amazing. Are you the hype man over there? What's going on? Okay. So, but it was just amazing objectively to see that, here's George, he hears this story, and he treats it like news, where at that time it was a laugh factory. We're supposed to make fun of this stuff. Mm-hmm. But George was like, no, dude, I'm being lied to. He saw the document trail. He's like, fuck this. I'm a journalist. I'm being lied to. I'll crack this case in 2 weeks. And there's Harry Reid, being like, I heard the Lazar interview. It's very interesting, George. It's a really cool piece of footage. So that relationship, it's like any good relationship over time is built on trust. You got to be trustworthy. So he had this relationship with Harry where there would never have been an OSAP. There would never have been an ATIP. There would never have been all this stuff if Harry Reid didn't listen to George that time in the limo and not kick him out. That's my personal opinion, but I think that's factual. He's at the center. Dude, this is a conspiracy. You're at the center, all this UFO stuff. But it started with that, I think, in my outside opinion, with you and Harry. Harry didn't kick you out. He heard what you had to say. And then, man, like over those years, how that relationship developed.
Yeah, he stayed good to his word. I mean, he didn't want to be out in front on this. It does no politician any favors to be a UFO guy. Certainly not back then. It's not so bad now. But, we maintained a dialogue. It wasn't every week, but it was every year, every couple of months. And he would help me behind the scenes. He would acquire things that I couldn't get on my own. Sometimes it was footage. Sometimes it was reports. There was a congressional research report that was prepared for members of Congress. if you want to know about UFOs, here it is for members. And I got the first copy outside of members of Congress that he had slipped to me, and it's damn fine work too. It's a really good report. But we stayed in touch, and then in '96, Robert Bigelow, he's the other person who had called me right after the Lazar story had aired and said, "Hey, that was great. Let's keep the conversation going." He wanted to meet Lazar.
And you're like, who are you?
Who are you? Yeah, I know. So we developed a friendship, and I stayed in touch with him, and he was always looking for ideas about UFO-related material. And then in '96, he creates NIDS, National Institute for Discovery Science, and they invited me to speak to their science advisory board, their first meeting. And I had just returned from Russia a second time, and I had all these documents, so I made a presentation. I walk in this room, and it's, hey, there's Dr. Edgar Mitchell, the sixth man to walk on the moon. There's Senator Harrison Schmitt, the last man to walk on the moon. There's Dr. Jacques Vallée. There's Dr. Kit Green. There's Hal Puthoff. Holy cow, look at this group. And all academics, all, names that I had known that only a few of I'd ever met. And I delivered this report, and I left that meeting thinking, man, Harry Reid's got to hear about this. So I called him. I was the first person I called after I told him about this organization called NIDS, hoping that he'd say, can I get an invitation? And that's what he said. Hey, you think they'd let me in there? Well, let me see what I can do.
Yeah.
We'll work on
And so I asked Bigelow, who invited him. He went to a meeting later in the year, and that was it. And he was all the way in. And some years later, that paid dividends in the sense that he became the chief sponsor for what became OSAP, and then later ATIP stemmed from that, the UAP task force, and on and on.
And Schumer keeps his legacy going.
He does.
Yeah.
Do you guys all know the story of George Knapp smuggling documents out of Russia about UFOs? Do you all know that story?
It's a goodie.
It's amazing to me. So here's a young journalist, kind of realized he's been lied to by our government about UFOs, goes to Russia during Glasnost and Perestroika, so it's like this moment when there's an openness. He contacts all
during Soviet light years. Yeah.
and I don't know what that means. I'm not smart enough. But so he rolls out there and basically goes to all these people that ran the UFO programs, like, give me the secret documents. And they gave them to him. And he puts them like in some newspapers in his bag under his arm. I mean, he would have gone to jail forever. I mean, straight up, you smuggled classified, the whole classified UFO documents out of Russia, and you brought those back and kind of alerted America and the public through your reporting on that. I mean, that's journalism. I mean, that's hard to do, man. You come back. I mean, he could have been arrested and put in jail for it. We now have those. So the government UFO programs have studied the documents he brought back. Some of the findings are amazing. Like, for example, they knew in Russia how many satellites the U.S. had pointed at UFOs. Is that correct information?
That's what they told us, yeah.
It's an incredible history of trying to uncover the truth of all this. One thing I learned from George Knapp is neutrality is not an option when it comes to this. If this is true, it's bigger than our political beliefs. It's bigger than our just human belief system. There's something else going on. So that moment, I think, is what really kicked off what we know today, which is like we're starting to uncover the truth. I hope we're uncovering some of the truth, that not only are UFOs real, but they represent something far beyond what humanity has been able to create. If that's the truth, I need another beer.
Yeah, and I think also didn't you find out that Stalin had been briefed on Roswell?
It's true. Yeah, we interviewed. There was the father of the Russian, the father of the Russian space program had been called in by Stalin to brief him on Roswell. Of course, Roswell was the home of the only atomic bomber wing in the world, so they had all kinds of Russian assets there keeping an eye on it. And when something crashes outside of town, they knew about it. And they used their information to gather what they could. And this one, Korolev was his name, was the father of the Russian space program and rocket program. And he studied it and came back and told Stalin, well, it's not theirs and it's not ours, so it's from somewhere else. And Stalin says, that's what we heard too. So they had an interest in it, as we did from early on. We talked to several Russian scientists who lived in these cities that didn't exist on a map, who had never spoken to a journalist, let alone a Western journalist, who felt they were able to come forward and told us about the satellites. That they had the first satellites up there. They knew they were encountering these things. They knew when we had satellites up there that we were encountering them. They knew darn good and well we had them. And they were working on The Ministry of Defense, Colonel I'm forgetting all these Russian names, but the colonel who was in charge of the Ministry of Defense study, it was the biggest study in the world, 10 years, the entire Russian military empire, every military unit had a duty to report any UFO, ball of light, strange object in the sky, unknown vehicle. All of that stuff had to be put into an official report, witness statements going in, any physical evidence, and it all went to one place. At the Ministry of Defense, and we found the guy who was in charge of it.
Sokolov?
Sokolov. Yeah, Colonel Sokolov, Boris Sokolov. And he shared, we were able to acquire a lot of this stuff. And then we met the successor, the guy who had been in charge of the program that came after that. And a lot of the documents, as Jeremy said, were classified. But the Russians only stamped the top page of their documents that were classified. So if you take that top page off, you throw
Doesn't count, right?
Yeah.
Count.
Yeah.
You throw the rest of it in your suitcase with some caviar, and
Yeah.
So we're not going to Russia. I'm not going with him. But.
No, I'm not. Anyway, they knew about it a long time ago. They knew that we knew about it, and they'd been lying to their public just as we lied to ours.
Yeah. And so, and also that counters the narrative where people say, "Well, how come this only happens in the U.S.?"
Yeah.
So clearly it's other governments, other militaries are encountering
Everywhere
it.
around the world. Yeah.
The Error Report is absolute bullshit. I'm sure all of you know. Do you know about the Error Report?
Yeah.
Okay, well, learn about it, buddy. It's bullshit. I mean, everybody's being lied to. This is a propaganda machine.
Yeah. Well, I love as a Canadian that when they put in they're cut and paste pages of programs that they claimed that people had mistaken for UFO programs.
God.
And one of them was the Avro Aero car, and the Avro story is pretty deeply ingrained in all Canadians. Because the Avro Aero, the jet that our Prime Minister Diefenbaker willingly dismantled and destroyed the plans for, was the first supersonic jet fighter in the world. And it was like the best and way ahead of anything anyone else had built. But our government agreed to dismantle it and destroy all of the plans for it. But they also built a thing called the Avro Aero car, which was a disc-shaped thing that was basically a ducted fan vehicle that barely ever got more than like 8 inches off the ground. And when it got 8 inches off the ground, it became completely unstable, and then it just crashed. And it only flew, I think, about 3 times, and only on the Avro property. So it's a little hard to understand how the public and other and experts could have confused the Avro Aero car that barely flew, only flew about 8 inches off the ground, and only flew a few times. How they were able to mistake that for a UFO program?
Okay, because you're Canadian, I'm going to give you props.
Yeah.
So you know about Wilbur Smith? Do you know
Wilbur Smith? No.
So a very famous memo. I don't know the name, but Wilbur Smith talked about how in the U.S. the UFO subject.
This is the Canadian.
Come on, it's UFO conference. Everybody knows about Wilbur Smith.
He was Canadian ambassador, wasn't he? Or was he?
Transportation.
Project
Magnet,
yes.
I think it was.
So
he was the
came
Department
back
of Transportation.
He's like, the UFO topic is considered higher security than the hydrogen bomb, right? Do you remember that kind of memo?
Yes.
The famous memo. So nothing's changed.
Yeah. And that was a long time ago.
Today, the UFO topic is at a higher level of security than weapons of mass destruction. This is taken so seriously we have personal direct information and knowledge and meetings where we know for sure that is true. So it's the same game, man, from all the way back then. Just because you're Canadian, Wilbur Smith kind of broke that story. Yeah.
Yes, that's right. I remember that story. Yeah.
Well, speaking of how important this is to the government, there's been some conversation recently about intimidation. I think Lou Elizondo talked about it on Matt Ford's Good Trouble show. I think Gary Nolan brought up that he had been warned. I know both of you as journalists and investigators have dealt with this. I don't know how much you care to share, but it certainly goes back to, what is that like, dealing with that? I know Bob Lazar dealt with it. It certainly is the irrefutable counterpoint to the ridiculous Arrow stuff, because my question is always, why? Why do you give a shit to dedicate resources to intimidating people from looking through? Why? Why would you bother doing it? So it is a sense of proof in itself, but I am curious of what that feels like.
Well, in one sense, it's a confirmation that you're on the right trail, I guess. I know that when it first happened to me, it really just ticked me off. Nobody's ever come to knock on the door and say, you better knock this off or else. But they've done other things around me that's clearly the intention. I've told the story many times about I made an open appeal on the air and television in Las Vegas back when we were first doing these reports. Look, I know there are people in our audience at KLAS who know the answers to some of this stuff, and I'm appealing to you to come forward and share with us what you can. And a lot of them did. And we had 6 people who I talked to on the phone in my office at KLAS. And in those days, you don't think that your phone in a newsroom is tapped. But somebody was listening, because 6 people right in a row who offered to give me information and appear on camera were visited by somebody who told them to shut the hell up and then directly threatened them. One with prison, the other with murder. They were scared to death. And I just couldn't believe it was happening. There was no way a federal judge gave a warrant to authorize tapping the phone of a news organization. I don't think. Today we assume that everything on our cell phones and computers, it's going to a giant database in Utah somewhere, which is probably true. But it really made me mad at the time. But it scared those people, and rightly so. I don't know that anybody else would actually be killed. Would Lou Elizondo be murdered over this? He's such a high-profile witness now. I don't know. Would Dave Grusch? I think they pulled some pretty tricky stuff on Dave Grusch to intimidate him, short of physically harming him, but have tried to scare him. They did that to Lazar over and over again. And I know you have your different opinions about Lazar, and at this point, I don't care if you believe him or not. It does not matter to me. I've had those fights for 36 years. I'm not fighting it anymore. I don't care. But I can tell you that during that period, in between of when he did the Dennis interview, the Silhouette, and when we went on the air in November of 1989, there were a lot of dirty tricks played on him that were real. And there's no way I can convey it to you and share with you what that period was really like. But it was really happening. They were breaking into his house and moving things around and writing things on his blackboard and taking this and moving around in his car. He goes to the gym. He was scared. He had a gun, an Uzi, in his car, and he goes to the gym with a friend. They come out. The doors of the car are open. The windows are rolled down. The glove box is open. There's the Uzi laying on the front seat. It was just, we're watching you. He tells a story about a tire on his car being shot out. Now, I was never able to confirm it, but I believe Bob was telling me the truth. He was legitimately scared. He'd call me sometimes at night after they'd been in his house, and I'd go rushing over, and he's peeking out the windows. He's not a paranoid guy. He's peeking out the windows, holding a gun, waiting for them to come back. Those things are real. There's no way you can convey what it was like, but it was true, and it just made me really angry about the whole thing. I could see them wanting to watch my phone to see if somebody was going to spill some other secret, some national security secret about Area 51, but they'd have to get a warrant, you'd think, and I just don't think they did.
Yeah, I was going to say, doesn't the First Amendment have protections against that sort of thing for news organizations?
Yeah, you'd have to really have a really strong case to make to get a federal judge to sign off on that. I just don't think they did.
Yeah.
I think they just did it.
Are you both mindful when someone comes forward about, are we emailing? Are we talking on the phone? Are we sending pigeons? What are we, how? I'm curious about how the two of you work together when you get a photo, you get a piece of footage, you get a person coming forward saying, I know something. How do the two of you, because it's a kind of great pair, you get both really will go to the truth no matter what and don't scare easy. How do you work together to verify stuff?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm lucky, right? So George has seen it for 30 years. He can tell me kind of what he's been through. Look, man, it takes a while because it's difficult. We are given false information all the time. I would say every day. Right, people want us to run with fake stories, discredit. I get that. People just hate what we do. I get that, right? The lucky thing is that we have independent sources. So George has a network he's developed over 30 years. I have my own network. So we can look at stuff from different angles that I think is pretty rare. That's pretty unique, the opportunity to be able to look at stuff objectively from different angles. So when we get information, people get so mad. It's like, oh, it took you 3.5 years to put out the jellyfish. Motherfucker, that was not public, okay? So if I start shouting about that and doing open research, there's only a few people on planet Earth who could be nailed for that. Because remember, we're not breaking the law. We're journalists, public interest. Nothing says classified on that video. I don't know what we got. So we'll bounce it back and forth. We'll take our time. He'll go to his independent sources who I don't know, and I'll go to mine, and we start to try to figure out, is there something of value here for the public? Because it's one thing to learn something for us, for our knowledge, so we can keep going forward. Another thing to put something out. So I feel really lucky that we have this dynamic where we can check each other, especially because he's been through so much of this for so long. But damn, we got good sources. That's the bottom line. And we can check the work with one another. And some stuff is so sketch, we can't put it out because we know someone's going to get busted for it. The last thing I want to do is take somebody who's just all interested in the UFO topic and put them in a place where they've done something that haunts them or their family. So, look, we're careful, man. We just take our time. And yeah, we're always concerned. He was tapped back in the Lazar days, at his news station. Now there's retroactive FISA warrants. Do you know about that stuff? You guys hear about that as journalists?
Retroactive FISA warrants?
Yeah, so you can so a lot of stuff is collected, and then if you're suspected of something, they can retroactively look through your communications.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So it's I'm trying to stay on the right side of the law. I like my freedom, my dog, my wife, my family. I don't want to get in any trouble. But breaking the news on this stuff, you have to protect sources. It's easy once something's public to not give a fuck about sources and just, try to crack open the books on stuff. But when you're really operating on, should I break this morally? Does it hurt the United States? We don't want to do that. We live here. This is our country, right? So it's you have to be careful. I don't know if I'm answering your question.
There's also information security. Are we cognizant that somebody is watching or listening or messing with us? And yeah,
We've been told by agencies about foreign nations looking at stuff that we haven't properly vetted to make sure it won't hurt the U.S. That's fact. So we're trying to be cognizant of not hurting national security, but also get into the truth on UFOs.
But why aren't you more concerned with people on Twitter who are getting bored?
Yeah, I know. It keeps us up at night.
Yeah, like
George is a social media ninja, man. He reads that stuff. I never read anything.
This is nothing new.
Man, I don't read the negative stuff anymore. My wife said it would kill my brain, so I don't want to do it. But I get all the negative stuff because friends and family send it to me.
Look,
they text me a link.
Yeah. Hey, I've spent 6 months here on X looking for proof. Why don't you deliver it to my front door?
Yeah.
But look, I just in defense of X, we are all interested in the same thing. All of us are interested. Maybe some of you in the audience had a personal experience. I'd love to hear it. We're all in the same boat. We're trying to figure out what's going on with this pesky UFO problem. Your buddy Robbie Williams always says, something's up. He's I don't know what it is, but something's up. Just, complacency is not an option. There's something going on that is bigger than our egos, than our humanity, and we all want to know what it is. We're all in the same boat, man. I don't know. We're lucky to be able to share stuff. I'm selfish. I do this for myself. I want to learn about this stuff. It's not to report it, not to make a movie, not to go on a TV show. I want to know the truth,
One thing to add, too, is about concerns about security matters and ramifications of releasing the material that comes our way. We are subject to, or two of the releases, at least that we put out, are subject to Department of Justice investigations for how they happen. Maybe more, but we know of two for sure. And part of the reason we know is some of our friends, Dan, you know who these people would be on X, who chortle about the idea. They love the idea that there's a department investigation that's prompted because we've released this video or this photo from what may or may not have been classified sources. And but that's not fun to think that that's underway and there's nothing you can do about it.
We're doing our best, and we want to like continue doing it. And you see this weird thing where people want to know the truth, but they're like, would love to get us raided by the feds. I proactively reach out to the feds. I'm like, look, put on your little like booties and stuff. My wife will kill me if you dirty the floor. Like, we're just doing journalism, man. If we're stepping over the line, fucking tell us. But our job is to try to get as much information out that we feel is valuable to the public. But there's obviously people that would just love to see you fucked. I don't know why, but
Speaking of people who want to see you fuck, should we bring up our good friend who's?
I love this guy.
Ernie?
Everybody, the price is right. This is Ernie Cline. You got to come
Ernie
up.
Cline?
Ernie.
Yes.
Cline. Yeah.
Writer of Ready Player One.
Here, I'll get a You're coming.
Great series. We got you.
Share mine.
Ernie, we got you.
I'm gonna go pee. They gave me beer. They gave you coffee. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
So,
So,
here,
all right.
George. I'll be right back.
So we're tagging Jeremy out.
Thank you, guys. The master of the Readyverse.
Yes.
Ernie Cline, ladies and gentlemen, how are you, sir?
I'm doing good. This is so exciting.
This is like
I
our
get
all-star.
most of my news from all the people on this stage. So this is and Richard Dolan. So it's all. I'm coming. This is like a news conference for me. I'm
Yeah,
excited.
I got really excited because I met Richard Dolan, found out that he was a huge Kids in the Hall fan, which was startled me. I was like, didn't expect
Everybody
that
is.
at all.
I think we all are, aren't we all?
No.
Kids in the Hall.
Ernie is a celebrated novelist, a New York Times bestseller that you probably have seen, Ready Player One. It was made into a hit movie directed by Steven Spielberg. Ready Player Two was also a big hit. And
Armada.
Yeah.
Armada, Giant Invasion. He's a student of ufology. He knows more about this stuff than I think I do. We took him on a trip, by the way, Dave, to Area 51 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Oh,
with
right,
Jeremy and I
yeah.
out there. We won't share all the details of that trip.
Yeah. No.
We need
But
to
it
know
was
the
fun.
details of that.
Yeah.
I love having
I wanted to go on
George
that.
Knapp here introduced.
Yeah,
This is
just-
great.
yeah.
I want to do this all the time.
cool.
This is
Yeah,
fantastic.
and Ernie also owns way more DeLoreans than you do.
I have two.
Yeah.
Dave's
Yes, he
Lorians.
does.
Yes.
We did an episode of Weaponized where it was like UFO cribs. We went on the road to Austin where Ernie lives and invaded his house, and he gave us the tour, got to see the DeLoreans that are signed by various celebrities and all kinds of movie memorabilia, 80s trivia stuff. And you've got a new project. They just announced it, I think, 2 days ago. They got the,
At the CoinDesk conference, Readyverse. Well, I'm also involved in a metaverse endeavor, a company called Readyverse that's working to make a lot of people after Ready Player One came out, approached me in the tech world because they were interested in making Ready Player One come true. There were a lot of people, but there was only really one group of people that seemed like they were actually set on doing it and doing it in a way that is an open and free metaverse, like depicted in my novel and in the movie. So I have partnered with them, and it's really exciting. Very few science fiction writers you get to have the experience that I have of like seeing something that you envision come true much sooner than you envision it, and then to get to play a role and get to help and advise the people who are actually building it is really exciting. It's so much easier to just sit at your keyboard and wouldn't it be cool if this happened? But the people who actually are making that technology work, I'm getting to be involved with them, which is really exciting.
And do you plan on making it dystopian?
No, that's that was my goal. I thought that could be my contribution is to help try to prevent it from being dystopian.
Oh,
but
good.
But
Okay.
in my science fiction, I try to always show the good and the bad sides of technology because there is always a good and a bad side to our technology. So I try to depict that in my fiction.
What's the game? What's the experience? What do you want the experience to be like in the Readyverse? Like, is it like the book? Is it?
Yeah.
Are you?
Well, yeah, I would like it to be. What I was trying to imagine with the metaverse and the Oasis in my book was the coolest possible future version of the internet and of video games. Mm-hmm. And growing up in the 70s and 80s, and then working in IT through the 90s and the aughts, you could see the way I could see the way that video games were evolving, and the internet was evolving, and eventually it would stop being a two-dimensional thing that you viewed through your screen, and eventually you would be inside the internet, and it would be a sprawling virtual space. And I was influenced by Neuromancer and William Gibson and stuff like that. So, and I think that's what we're going to have. I mean, there's so many people invested in creating that now, really smart people. Just a question of some people want to make like a closed metaverse, which is not what the metaverse is. Like when Mark Zuckerberg wants to create the metaverse, that's a closed, walled off thing, and it's not open, and it's not like a platform that everyone can build on. So that's kind of what we're trying to do. It's not. I'm still writing fiction and writing stories, and is still my primary focus. And that's how I've gotten involved with these guys. Is I could see that my role, that maybe as a storyteller, I could help tell this secret history of our world and our country, and especially there's like a whole secret history that happened that we know nothing about. Like when a movie like Oppenheimer comes out, I'm so excited, such a beautiful masterpiece. There's a whole part of that story that's missing. There were, when Enrico Fermi was coming up with the Fermi paradox, there are UFOs buzzing all around Los Alamos. Like those guys, so when we get a movie like Oppenheimer, it's just it's a false history of our country. I'm pretty sure the reason that guy, a lot of things that happened with Oppenheimer were due to the UFO problem and the way that played into politics. So I would, and the reason I sought out George and Jeremy is I could see that George was kind of my, like a lot of you, my entry into the UFO world, and seeing the best evidence changed my life. I was like, holy crap, and I think that's why, for me, George Knapp is the greatest journalist in American history and probably the history of the world. Hands down. There's not even any close competition. Woodward and Bernstein.
Laying it on kind of thick, Ernie.
No. What's the competition? Woodward and Bernstein? Like that story's nothing. And again, those guys, every great Pulitzer Prize winning reporter you've heard of, they heard about UFOs and they ignored it and walked away from it. But not this guy. Only one journalist. It's like Richard Dolan. Very few academics encountered the truth in their research and didn't run away from it. People like Richard Dolan and George Knapp and John Mack. I revere those people, and I want to help share their stories with the world. And so that's my interest. And these guys all played a big, are hugely influential on me. So it's an honor to be up here with you guys.
Oh, it's an honor to have you here.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think anytime someone with a high profile takes the subject seriously, it dispels some of the stigma. Everyone that does it is lowering the level of stigma and raising the likelihood that we're going to get answers, but also reducing the suffering of people in the community who have experienced stuff and have lived with the ridicule and lived with the fear.
It's shameful the way experiencers and just people who've seen something in the sky have been treated by our country. Our government has been conducting a willful psychological warfare campaign against its own citizens since before I was born, before any of us were born. It's a harsh realization to come to as a kid who grew up just shoveling American propaganda into my face like Fruity Pebbles and just eating it up. And the truth is, first contact happened, America, and you weren't told. Your leaders decided to not tell you they had made first contact with a non-human intelligence because they didn't think you could handle it. And they've been gaslighting us ever since. So I don't know, as a science fiction writer, I tell this to my fellow science fiction writers, I don't know, how do we do our job? I can't do my job as a science fiction writer, which is to take the current technology and extrapolate where it's going to go into the future. But guess what? I and every scientist in this country doesn't know what the state of the current technology is. We don't know what human technology, we just know what they're willing to show us. So that's something that everybody needs to become aware of. And if I have any juice as a storyteller, that's what I want to use, is to help bring this to light. And so I've been developing a nonfiction television series or dramatic, but based kind of on George, following George through Lear and Lazar in the 80s, and then NIDS in Russia in the 90s, and then, just nonstop, all the way up to the congressional hearing last year. It just warmed my heart. Man, every time they would show, Graves and Fravor and Grusch, you could see George and Jeremy right in between. It was because I felt like that was the culmination of George's whole journey from having, Lear on in 87 all the way up, 36 years. It's the greatest achievement in the history of journalism. It's the biggest news story of all time, and one dude broke it, and it wasn't the New York Times. It was this guy. So I'm really excited.
Is there a check involved?
No, man. Well,
I'm stealing the mic for a second. That was an amazing moment. I'm looking at George, and we're in there, and I look at him, and you could just tell it was like, what's the word? Ontological shock? Is that the word? It was like, oh my gosh, after all this time, like the movie Don't Look Up, he's seeing it play out. Finally, fucking people are being honest, you know?
Yeah.
It was pretty cool.
One guy is being honest. David Grusch. Like, not anybody else, and not Lou. Not Hal, not Eric. Well, Eric Davis too, the other guy. But that's what I love about him, David Grusch. He said the quiet part loud. Agreements, plural, and bodies, plural. Like, those are the two scariest pluralizations in history, and the two, the two words that everybody at the New York Times and Washington Post and every journalist all around the world, like, if you didn't focus in on agreements and bodies, because that's, for me, that's why they can never even go far to as admit that UFOs are real, because then the questions, like you said, the questions never end. Oh, so you've got their bodies? Well, what did the DNA tell you? And there's a secret there. They don't want to tell us because a lot of the DNA matches up, right? That's the sense that I get from, anybody who claims to have ever had a look at the DNA is that a big chunk of it's our DNA. What does that mean? And why am I going to my job tomorrow or paying taxes? It starts to make you question everything. So I think maybe they feel like, and also like part of being in the government is creating the illusion that you're in charge. We're in charge and we've got it under control. And to admit that UFOs are real is to admit we're not in charge. We have nothing under control. We don't know who they are or where they're from. We can't help you if they come to, abduct you. They have a remote control. They barely apparently can control us. And this is all horrifying stuff that the government could never admit to its citizens, because to admit so is to admit you're not a sovereign nation or in control of your own government.
Have there been people in your life that have tried to discourage you from engaging with this publicly?
They could see that it was a lost cause, They could hear me talk like this. They're like, "Whoa, Ernie's really serious about this," and
don't get in his way.
Don't get in his way, because I won't let go of it. I modeled my behavior after my hero George Knapp. I'm never gonna back down because I know it's so obvious what the truth is. Once you do enough reading and read enough FOIA CIA documents and watch enough, of the Air Force's shenanigans, it's clear. It's like what David Grusch said in the hearing. Anybody who takes a serious look and has an ounce of, cognitive reasoning can see that they've been obfuscating this and hiding it. And I always think of the Air Force holding up their Roswell case closed, and they put like a font, case closed, like we're going to put an end to it. Bam, Roswell. They're just, what I would love is somebody with better graphic design skills than me to redo the Air Force Aim High bumper sticker and have it say Air Force We Lie. Would be, wouldn't that be good? Somebody make that happen. I will buy a ton of those bumper stickers.
Mm-hmm. As friends to both Bob Lazar and David Grusch, have they had a beer yet? Can we get those two to get? Can you tell us? Have they met?
That would be so much fun.
Yeah. So Bob Lazar, you guys know who Bob Lazar is, obviously.
Yeah.
And and David Grusch, I can confirm they have had beers. And have you ever heard like David Grusch talk about Bob?
No.
Like publicly?
No.
Like, we talk all the time. He's like, people going to catch up with Bob, man. He is correct. He knows what's up. It's amazing. David Grusch defends Bob because we had a meeting. There's a photo. Who took that? We're in a hotel room. We started a lot of conspiracies. It was me, you, David Grusch, Bob Lazar, Matt Adams, right? In Grusch. Oregon? It was Dave Fravor. I'm sorry. Who did you ask about?
Grusch.
David
Grusch.
Fravor? Oh, Grusch?
Grusch.
Oh, has Grusch and Bob had a beer?
Yeah.
No, unfortunately not.
I knew. Oh, okay. I knew
was going off on a
Fravor.
crazy story. I'm so sorry.
No, Fravor. Yeah.
It was a good one. It was a good story. It was a good story.
There are a bunch of people deleting their blog entries.
Yeah.
But here's the deal. Bob Lazar's reaction to David Grusch was first disbelief. He goes, dude, they're going to fuck you up, Jeremy. He's like, stop. You and George are going to get fucked up. And he's like, Dave's going to get fucked up. And then he heard what Dave Grusch said, and he's like, hell yeah, raised his fist. He's like, I can't believe it, but that was powerful that Dave came forward. Bob knows, he knows what's up. So that was really neat. They have not been able to hang out and have a beer. I should arrange that. David Fravor and Bob Lazar have had a cool moment where we're in this hotel and we're looking through some stuff, and there's this weird photo. Somebody took it all surreptitiously. And it started a lot of conspiracies, but
well, there's video of that meeting out that you put out.
Video?
Of you guys in the hotel room, yeah. I've seen
a photograph.
No, I've seen video of you
Really?
of
Well,
Bob
that's
and
probably true.
Fravor
I don't
talking.
know. I got hit in the head a lot.
Yeah.
Anyway, so David Grusch, so Bob was like very happy. He was happy for David Grusch. He was happy that came forward, but he was worried about David Grusch because of what Bob went through. That was the sense I got from Bob. Bob's always telling me, he's like, you and George got to be careful, man. They're going to mess you up. You got to be careful. I'm like, that's a kettle calling the pot black. You telling us not to talk about UFOs. So I don't know. I would love to see that happen. David Grusch and Bob Lazar hang out sometime. Yeah.
We have had conversations with Dave Grusch about Lazar, and it's still private, but I mean, he has definite views on the whole thing.
Yeah, well, I don't know if I can say it, but
You can say it.
what?
Tom just got clearance.
I got clear.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good.
Caleb gave me the thumbs
look,
up over here.
the first time I ever met David Grusch, George and I was, way before he became public, and we were, vetting him and trying to figure out what's going on. Our agreement was we're not going to report on whatever we find. He needed protection. That's straight up. David Grusch was worried because of what was happening to him. So at that time, though, I think it's fair to say he doesn't think Lazar made it up. I don't know. Let Dave talk for himself. I'll talk with it. Don't write that on the internet. Let me let's see if we can get Grusch to talk about that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And if maybe Bob could make.
I should shut up now.
Maybe Bob could
I have
build
no filter.
Grusch one of his laser guns.
Yeah.
That you have.
Laser gun.
I think
Jeremy has a laser gun that Bob built for him.
Yeah.
That actually that I've sat with him as he started like a campfire with it. It's amazing.
There were allegations that Lazar made flamethrowers for a while, long before Elon started making flamethrowers.
Oh yeah.
I have a friend of mine that might have one. I don't know if it's legal to have that, so I'm not going to identify that friend.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Wow.
Doesn't shock me in the least, but
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense. So Bob is, to my knowledge, the only person to come forward as publicly as he has to say, I worked in this program, I was inside this vessel, I saw all its weird melted contours and no right angles. I can't think of anyone else that has come forward to say that with that level of kind of just incredible specificity and credibility. My question is, of who you know that is either anonymous or perhaps public, in your opinion, has, other than Bob, been in the presence of a craft?
Look, the unsung heroes are the people that have come forward to me and George or other people and have tried to find a way in, have tried to find a way to report what they've had firsthand direct knowledge of the craft, the programs, on a program. You've all heard that in the media, that there are people, obviously, that have come forward in some way. I don't know the motivation for somebody who's been or active in a program to come forward. They saw what happened to Grusch. They saw what, all this stuff. I don't know the path forward for them. Maybe we've tried to connect people first to Arrow, just seeing what's going on, Senate Intelligence Committee. Also, there's unsung heroes you'll never hear about. Now, what is their motivation to come forward? Do they want to crack the egg and tell the world, this is all true and I can stand up there in front of Congress? I don't see it happening right now. I hope that people are given the opportunity to do that. Yeah, Lazar is a one-off, right? Because of his employment and how it happened with George. I don't know what we're going to see in the next couple years. I do hope that people do come forward, but you have to understand a lot of these people are still with security clearance. They're still in programs. They still work for agencies. They take a huge risk just meeting with me and George Knapp. I mean, they take huge risks just meeting physically with us, like when we go to DC and stuff. So I don't know what's going to happen. Is that your question? I don't know.
Well, I'm
what's
just
gonna
wondering,
happen.
of those people, you feel some of those people have physically been in the presence of
I
the
know
debris and
yeah,
materials.
but look, the way that it's done. So Dr. James Lakatsky came on Weaponized, and he admitted straight up, we have a craft, we have a UFO, a non-human intelligence-made craft. You guys see that, the Weaponized podcast where he said that? That was pretty baller.
That was awesome.
And not just that they had it.
I mean, you guys were going at him, but it was going around and around in an amazing way.
The hole. Well, I was messing with. He's like a friend of George. I don't want to be so mean to him. He's a friend of George, but I was pressing
You're just
him.
trying to get. He was.
But Dr. Colm Kelleher, also on Weaponized, like told us straight up, these are guys that have direct knowledge of this stuff. So it's like, how many people actually have this? It's such a small program that deals with the physical hardware. How many people on planet Earth actually have that? We're lucky to get a few people to come forward, like Dr. Colm Kelleher, like Dr. James Lakatsky, but that's because George is pals with him. You know, I'm the pit bull. He sets me up. There we go. We got him to admit it. But yeah, man, we'll see what happens. I hope. Go ahead.
You know, what argument do you make to somebody who has this information, who still has a job, who still has a security clearance, who wants to, basically they know it's important for humanity to know this stuff, but they got a family and they're scared. The last time we were in D.C., we met with this guy. The last thing we did in D.C., we had to go out of the way places and driving around and trying to hide, and still we were found. And this guy's legitimately scared, really scared about what's going to happen to him. Would they bump him off? You know, would anyone look twice at an auto accident? Or, you know, and say he comes forward and even the Senate offers to protect him, or, you know, what's happened to Dave Grusch stands out an example. There are levels of whistleblowers. The guys who really know this stuff, their risk is greater. The ones who came forward to Arrow and told the stories, now we saw how they were treated. Other ones who've tried to come forward, there are roadblocks thrown in their way. There are threats and intimidation, and some of the key ones, like some of the ones that we've met with before, are scared. They're really scared. Whether they think that the threat is real, and so we don't know how that's going to go forward. They are not encouraged by recent events to go ahead and come forward and testify. They're not looking to write a book. They don't want to be famous. Although there are a couple that probably do want to be famous, whose stories may be less credible than the level of people we're talking about.
See, I had an idea for a way to lure more whistleblowers out, and it's by holding a big award ceremony like the Oscars, called the Quijones. Because you need, if you're going to fight the military-industrial complex, you need solid brass Quijones, like Donald Quijo. So if we call it the Quijones, and I want to have like the first annual Quijones in Austin, you guys would all deserve Quijones. But I think David Grusch, Bob Lazar, those guys deserve Quijones. And John Mack posthumously, Stanton Friedman, those guys. But I think maybe if we had Bob Bigelow put up a big cash prize for anybody who wins Quijones. I think about Elon Musk offering to back anybody who wants to sue Disney. Like if we had a big, a big person to bankroll an award ceremony like that, and also to protect them legally and offer to give, I heard Stephen Bassett just say he thinks every whistleblower who comes out, like protecting them and legally and physically, is like $1 million problem for each whistleblower. And there's not $1 million sitting around for to protect each of those guys. So it's no wonder they don't come out. That's what makes David Grusch so much more amazing. Like that guy.
Let me say something about Grusch. Yeah, so David Grusch is an awesome individual, a great human being. George and I were able to know him for a long time before he came public. He didn't do it lightly. For whatever you think, whatever you've heard about David Grusch, I mean, he's come to meet my family. Like, I know the guy. He's the real deal. What David Grusch is telling you, it's how he experienced it. He was tasked by the UAP task force. He was tasked by Jay Stratton to go find these black programs. I don't know if I understood what it means to go under oath, which we fought for. We made sure they were under oath. They wanted to be. Congress, it was hard to get that, but they were under oath. The fact David Grusch came forward and told you the maximum amount he could, man, he's got balls like church bells. I mean, the dude did it. He came forward. You really got to be grateful that he could do that. he's a real American hero, like Commander David Fravor too, just coming up. I mean, I had to like extort him to get him there, but like, I pressured him. He felt like he owed me something, but it was just those guys doing that was really big, and it's just a very small piece of the puzzle. I hope more people are coming forward. The people that George and I talk to, they can't do it. One day I hope they can. That's all.
Well, okay. So I know you two are fact-based journalists. You must have, through this whole process, formed your own personal belief about what this interaction is. I'm just curious. Maybe not, but I have to assume, even if it's dark, I'm just curious what your personal belief is. Ernie, I want to know your personal, but Dave, I'm less interested in your personal belief about it, but you can share too. But yeah, I'm just, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. I really don't, and I don't really want to put myself into I don't want to lock in on something. You want to be flexible because my opinion has changed a bunch of times over the course of the years. When I started, the dominant paradigm was these are ETs from other planets visiting us. And then, start reading Jacques Vallée and you realize, and talk and get to meet Vallée and him saying, well, some of them might be, but I'm going to be really disappointed if that's the ultimate answer to this, because it seems like they can manipulate space and time in ways that we can't, and they could be from anywhere. They could be extraterrestrial, interdimensional, they could be ultra-terrestrials, they could be time travelers, they could be all the above, and some other kind of entity that we haven't figured out. You figure if they are extraterrestrial and there's some civilization out there that's 1 billion years older than us, how far advanced will we be in 1,000 years? Think about the last 50 years. How far we've come. Things that we carry around in our pockets.
Yeah, the Wright brothers was yesterday.
So something out there that's 1 billion, 2 billion years older, that's advanced, where it doesn't need a physical body anymore, that understands consciousness and could be everywhere all at once. We could have a whole zoo of different kinds of non-human intelligence among us that we're not even close to being able to understand. They will sprinkle us little breadcrumbs now and then that lead us down the path a bit. But so I don't lock myself into any belief. It's a lot of fun chasing it, though.
Yeah. What about you, Jeremy?
This is the Truman Show, man. Human beings are we're fascinating. There's an observation program. I don't know by who, but whatever's going on. I mean, we're being lied to. There's something incredible going on. And we are part of an observation program. That's, to the best of my knowledge, that's what it seems like. I'm not afraid of it. People are worried, about what's going on. It's been going on a long time. It's just a beautiful time to be alive. It's an exciting thing that this is uncharted territory. We're all in this together. I don't know where this goes, but it's a unique thing to be alive right now, where we can talk about this openly. Yeah, It's like something's going on, as Robbie says. Something's up, man.
What do you think, Ernie? You got an intuition about this stuff?
Well, I think George, I kind of echo what George says. It could be all of the above. It seems like it's all of the above, interdimensional, ultra-terrestrial, or it's something masquerading as all of the above. But what fascinates me is the overlap between the phenomenon and UFO sightings and near-death experiences. To me, that's where the rubber meets the road. People will have near-death experiences and then see entities that are similar to entities that, like what Whitley saw during his communion. And a lot of people will have a near-death experience and then come back and describe the same thing, which was that they suddenly realized that their whole life here on Earth was a ride, like Bill Hicks said, something that they agreed to take, like getting on a roller coaster, and you get knocked off the roller coaster and realize, that it's like driving a car and then getting in a car accident and getting knocked out of the car and realizing that your body wasn't the car the whole time. You were this, consciousness, a soul wrapped inside the body. That's something that I used to totally reject as a, hard scientist and a science fiction writer and somebody who embraced science. I thought that was all, I was raised in a religious Christian household, so I rejected all of that as mythology that had just been handed down to me. But now there's hard science, hard scientific evidence and actual scientists all around the world studying near-death experiences and the commonalities between them. And I think, I would like to believe that this is all a ride that we're taking together, and that it's a school. But on both of these guys' podcasts, we talked about the darker theory that it's a farm, lab, or a zoo. And all three of which you're not able to leave. We're not able to leave here. Whatever we're doing here, we're kind of stuck here. They're not letting us leave, and so maybe that's by choice. So I don't know. I'm in search of, like you guys.
Well, thinking that, we talk a lot about how the aperture of credulity changes on this subject. But one thing, maybe just a little side note, is before we finish up, I was a little startled when Carl Nell in his Salt Talk name-checked Haim Eshed, who was the head of Israel's space program and space defense program, and the guy who came out and said that there is an intergalactic federation.
Yeah.
Did that startle you when he brought that up?
Yeah, it startled me when I first heard it, because that guy who said it was a pretty credible guy in a pretty credible position. You would think in a position to know. But there's never any follow-up. Nobody else could get to him and ask him follow-up questions. He hasn't said it again, as far as I know.
No.
And then for Nell to come forward and say that, bam, because I don't know, I thought it was kind of fanciful. It sounded a little too Star Trek-y,
And P.S. humans aren't invited. That's the story of the Intergalactic Federation of Planets, and we're not invited.
Yeah, because he also said that there were bases on Mars. The federation, there was a federation, but
What is this side conversation
that?
going on here? What's happening?
yeah.
Yeah, he reached out to me. So check this out.
Haim Eshed?
Yeah. So through an emissary.
Yeah.
When that story broke, I was like, "Who's this guy?" And so he is the head of the satellite program for Israel. And I was like, okay, interesting. So I went deep, man. I went George Knapp, investigative journalist. I found the guy that went to his house. I was like, what is he talking about? Have you guys seen that? I put that out online. I interviewed the journalist that interviewed him. Have you guys seen that?
Yeah, I saw.
It's like
Well,
weird.
I did. I saw
Why
it.
would you do that? I don't even watch that shit. Anyway, so I found him. I put it out on my YouTube. So here's the deal. I don't know what I don't know if the journalist, it was through the filter of that journalist, but that guy, who was a real deal Holyfield, that guy, he might have been talking from books a little bit, but steadfast. He's like, we're being visited, blah, blah, blah. So I don't know. Let's update them on that. We should call him back. I got an email about it. That guy was the head of the Israel satellite program. Do you know about him a little bit? So I don't know. To be determined. Coming soon on Weaponized. I don't know.
All right, looking forward to it.
Nice promo for Weaponized.
Yeah. Are we?
No, we're good. We're good.
We're not.
Just
We're good
relax.
for time.
Yeah,
I thought
yeah,
I thought I saw people signaling, "Shut them up."
No, I don't. We're going for 6 hours. We always hold George Knapp hostage for 9-10 hours at a time. Wait, no, we have it. We have about a half hour more. But
That half hour. Oh my God.
Dave's got. Do you have some place to go?
No.
Do you have another appointment? All right.
4 minutes. Let's go.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. We can wrap this up pretty soon. Is that
Yeah.
is that the where
Well, because
we're
I
at?
thought we were an hour. We were doing an hour and a half.
Oh, gotcha.
Right.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
there you go.
So
You
we're
guys
about,
got a great podcast,
about 5
by the
minutes.
way. I'm a big fan of your podcast.
Me too.
So-
Say it on mic.
I'm a big fan of your podcast.
Oh, good.
Is it called what?
No. No.
It's called Really.
Yeah.
Let's get a couple
Yeah.
questions then.
I like your Weepy Eyes podcast too. Yeah.
Do we have any questions for this esteemed panel?
Yeah. Oh my God, you people.
Yes, you in the back, sir.
You can't see these. There's amazing people in this audience today.
Just use your inside voice.
Well, here.
So Steven Spielberg, I guess, is now doing another UFO movie.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys heard about that.
Yes.
What's your thoughts on that? And do you think he's gonna release stuff, information that's gonna move the needle even more?
I don't know.
Good question.
A lot of people assume that Steven is working in cahoots with, intelligence agencies to disseminate information. Getting to know him, I don't believe that. I know that when he wrote Close Encounters, and he was in pre-production. The Air Force wrote him a letter asking him not to make the movie. And he got really excited. He's like, "Oh man, I know I'm onto something now." And he has that letter like framed in his archives. So he he doesn't. I don't know. I think he the guy who wrote Close Encounters and E.T. knows that the government's been lying to us and depicted that in his films. And I think he's still very passionate about it. He has not shared with me. It's top secret what this new project is about. I'm really interested to see what he adds to in the the pantheon of Close Encounters, E.T., and then War of the Worlds. He kind of oscillates between friendly aliens, and the last entry is War of the Worlds, which is mean aliens. I know he was for a while he was going to make a movie about the Kecksburg incident where the family was attacked by these little creatures. That was actually his initial project about aliens before E.T. So maybe it'll be something like that where he goes back to scary aliens.
What about the Taken series?
Oh, and
that was
the
a fun little family romp.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But again, you could see how between shows like Taken and Bryce's show Dark Skies, that it would seem like Hollywood is in cahoots, or at least being directed. But I think often it's just passionate people like Bryce. Bryce Zabel is a passionate a person about this subject, but also a creative writer and wants to include it in his storytelling. Although Bryce does say that people showed up at one of his parties from intelligence agencies to try to direct their show. So I do think
suggest storylines. Yeah, I also want to say I always felt like the color purple was a little light on UFOs.
I know, right?
I agree with you. Yes.
Yeah, I think
subtext.
that was one of the. I don't like to be critical, but it's one of the movie's major failings.
Yeah. Thought there would be more aliens.
pass that on.
Is there another question? Yes, sorry.
My question is about transparency of the U.S. military. George's previous presentation, George and George, someone in the audience asked about the U.S. Navy and the U.S. Air Force and got answers for that. But my question is, how transparent is the U.S. Space Force?
Zero.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's still so new. I don't know what information they had. I don't know that they've collected a lot of UFO information or whether they've asked for it from other agencies. I just don't know. I haven't worked that angle yet. Mm-hmm. Does anybody else know?
No, I don't know anything.
Dave, don't you know about the Space Force?
Yeah.
Seems like zero transparency is what we're going to get.
Yeah.
And accountability from the Air Force. I don't know how the Air Force can just clam up and nobody forces them to speak. Also, I would suggest all you folks investigate Christian religious fanaticism in the Air Force. Just Google that. They've been taken to task several times for the way that the Air Force Academy, when they were training their officers in training, would persecute anybody who's not a far-right Christian. So that's something that's a problem in our Air Force that I think is tied to transparency, and also them telling everybody in the Pentagon that these things are demons and we shouldn't be investigating them at all. That's who we've got driving the bus. It's really upsetting.
What's the name of the group? There's an actual sort of an informal group within the military, and I can't remember the name of it ever. The Collins Elite. That's it.
Oh,
yes, the Collins Elite.
Well, I think now it's the Legacy program.
Yeah. Anyone else? Dan Warren, you got a question?
Hit us, man. What's up?
All right. Weaponized Podcast, episode 51. When is it coming out, and who's going to be your special guest?
Jeremy.
Jeremy, George. Episode 51 of Weaponized.
The only thing
Who's
harder
on?
than investigating UFOs is getting George Knapp on an airplane to a specific point in time and space. Episode 51 of Weaponized is going to be awesome. But you're going to have to wait for it, Dan. And I'm not telling you shit. Right?
Yeah.
We got you.
We got anyone else have anything? George?
It will be awesome. And I've been traveling a lot. A lot of it is Jeremy's fault, and some of it's my own. But I've been a hard guy to pin down. But I think things are going to calm down for me in like a month, and maybe we could get onto it.
I got to get him on a plane. It's all set up, Dan. Get ready.
What is catastrophic disclosure?
I mean, does that? I mean, it sounds pretty bad. I mean, is catastrophic disclosure that Russia brings out one of some disc they've been holding for a while and we're caught with our pants down? I mean, is that what? I guess I'm asking this because
catastrophic disclosure. What, humans are being farmed for loosh or by psychic vampires hidden in the far side of the moon?
I mean, that would count.
That would be bad news. No one's showing up for work tomorrow or paying their taxes ever again. I think catastrophic disclosure is anything that makes the whole social order break down and people are like, oh, our government's not in charge. They can't protect us. We're on our own. Like, it's a cascading domino, effect.
So do you ease people into the farming idea? I mean, you just get them like take agriculture classes,
avoid revealing it as long as possible.
Well, we'll start making a lot of movies about it. It's so cool to be farmed.
Hey,
it's fun on this farm.
If you've been able to shine on the entire world for 80 years and just keep kicking the can down the road, then why not? Let's keep it up, guys. We could probably do this reach a century. I think they're going to hit a century of gaslighting.
That's my question, though. Do you think? I mean, is
well, George pushed Bob Lazar into a long time ago, admitting that he had heard that we are containers. Like that was an interesting thing that you got out of Bob.
Yeah, containers and containers for what? And it was really tough squeezing that information out of him. It took a long time, but human souls, basically, is what he said. And he was embarrassed to say it. He doesn't know that it's true. He just knows that he had read that in his briefing documents. There are also some indications that we'd been genetically manipulated by them, whoever they are, wherever they're from. Those are sobering truths, if they turn out to be truths, to absorb. We all like to think we are ready to know, we can handle the truth. We don't exactly know what the truth is, as Ernie said. So if we're a farm, if we're an agricultural product, if we've been created to evolve to this point so they can suck souls out of us, or as George Norrie joked, what's the Twilight episode about the cookbook?
To Serve Man.
Yeah. To Serve Man.
Yeah.
Starring Canadian Larry Dane.
We don't know what the ultimate truth is. But I think we all know that we don't like being lied to, whatever it is.
Yeah, I definitely think I always say when people talk about it being a zoo, and I think it seems much more likely that we're more of a game farm than a zoo. Because in a zoo, they take care of you. They make sure you've got your shots. They make sure you're well fed. You're protected. You don't have to hunt. You don't have to kill any. No one's going to kill you. But on a game preserve.
Dave, do you need any shots?
They just let you go.
They just guard the fences.
Yeah.
They just guard the border and keep you pinned up.
And but the gazelles get eaten by the lions. And
it's a good point.
Yeah.
But I know it's been put forward that UFOs are zookeeping robots that are 3D printed, purpose-built, and every time we set off a nuke or move our nukes around, these UFOs show up. If you were going to have autonomous zookeeping robots, that would be a good thing to program them to do, is every time the monkeys go moving their nukes around, getting ready to use them on each other, like we send in probes that monitor them, which is why they show up in every... I've heard that our military are playing cat and mouse games where they'll move their nukes around on purpose to lure UFOs in and then set off EMPs to bring them down. Real smart guys we've got in control. That's why it kills me. Like if the others are giving us free energy technology over and over again, and they're like, they won't take it. They keep sticking it in a hangar, and they keep using their oil chits. These monkeys really love their oil chits and their petrodollar, and we just can't. They don't want the free energy. That's how they must look at us. Like their leaders just won't pass it on.
I agree with that.
It makes me angry.
If they've ever flown over Las Vegas on the 4th of July and see the constant barrage and explosives in every direction, they know we're crazy.
Yeah.
Well, we don't want to quite end on the game preserve note, so
no,
I'm going to.
You're afraid of the truth, Tom.
I'm going to throw out the idea. E.T.'s my favorite alien movie, Dave. How about the fact that Japan has announced they're doing a study that seems to be pretty official. We've got the UK apparently is doing a new study. So there's a little bit, the empire struck back for a minute, but what is our level of, what's our level of faith that this is becoming sort of a global discussion? Will we see more of that in the next year or two or three? What do we think?
Yeah, I think that is true. It is happening. A lot of progress has been made in the last 5.5, 6 years in terms of media taking it seriously, members of Congress. It gives cover for academics like Avi Loeb and Gary Nolan and others who have come forward and are having conferences, interacting with colleagues, encouraging research, thinking about this stuff, talking about it. The script has changed a lot in the last few years, and I think it will continue to change because as more scientists and journalists look at the total record of information, there's a lot to study. Mm-hmm. There is evidence. You just have to have the courage to go ahead and look at it, and we're moving in a good direction. But that movement it's not inertia. It can stop, and what we're seeing now is some serious pushback. That report from Arrow tells me that they will never release this. Our government will never do this. It'll have to be somebody else, either another government or some scientific investigation that confirms something that is indisputable, or whoever they are, give us a demonstration that beyond which there's no argument.
So in terms of the rewritten UAP Disclosure Act of 2023 that's apparently being rewritten and still do we know, is that have a prayer in hell? Is that an exercise in futility?
Probably the same as before. If it has that eminent domain thing in it, it's going to have problems. I'll believe it when I see it. And even if they pass that, if there's stuff in particular hangars, I don't see any way in hell they give that up. I don't believe it.
Catastrophic disclosure sounds really ominous and scary. It's kind of bullshit to me. Here's the deal. We tried it right. We tried to bring people forward through the channels that were correct with their clearances, and we got pushback, and as you can see, the Schumer Amendment didn't pass, so that would be non-catastrophic disclosure. Open the books, tell people what's going on. It's kind of a fear-mongering term, honestly. It's a weird term, catastrophic disclosure. Like, here's how it's going to happen. Because it can't happen officially, because of the Schumer Amendment being shut down. Okay, great. So people are going to leak shit. People are going to come forward. We have people on record. It's just a matter of how that's done. If it's not going to be done officially, it'll be done through journalism. Straight up, it'll be done through journalism. And if that's the way it has to happen, you could call that catastrophic. I just call that telling the fucking truth. So that's where we're at. Catastrophic disclosure is just people saying, fuck this, I'm telling journalists, we're moving forward. And I think that's what's going to happen. It's not scary. Come on, guys, it's the truth, right? So I think that's how it's going to happen. I think it's going to happen through leaks and through journalism. That's where we're at. We tried it the right way, easy way or hard way. Tried the easy way, didn't happen. So now we got to fight. This is the time, really, for us to do good journalism. So hopefully we get the opportunity to do so.
Well, that seems like a pretty good note.
Yeah, that's how we wrap shit up around here.
Yeah.
We're not playing around.
Yeah.
That's great.
But you all are on a game preserve. Don't forget it.
Damn it, Dave.
All right. But thank you so much, guys, for being here.
We're so grateful for this.
Thank you all for being here.
Thank you all here at Contact in the Desert. Jeremy Corbell, Ernie Cline, and George Knapp, ladies and gentlemen. Yes.
And we are, of course, Tom Wheeler and Dave Foley.
We are, yes. Like and subscribe. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
All right.
Hey, guys. This is really fun. It's really cool hanging out with you. I'm glad George Knapp, despite my wife saying, fucking George Knapp, you got me out here. It's really cool hanging out with you all. I'm glad to see. Dan, keep making your work, Dan. I'm really a big fan of your channel, okay? So anyway, thanks, guys. It was really fun hanging out.
Thank you, guys. Yeah.